Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. The office door clicked shut behind him as Clyde stepped out. Freedom at last. The weekend stretched ahead, full of promise and possibility. He inhaled deeply, savoring the scent of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke. His feet carried him down the familiar sidewalk, past the usual shops and cafes. But something caught his eye, making him pause mid-stride. There, in a boutique window, a dress shimmered under the soft glow of artfully arranged lighting. The garment was a vision in deep emerald silk, with delicate beading along the neckline and a flirty knee-length skirt. Clyde's breath caught in his throat. He could almost feel the cool slide of fabric against his skin. Imagine the swish of the skirt around his legs as he twirled. For a moment, the busy street faded away, and he saw herself reflected in the glass. Matilda. Beautiful, confident Matilda, wearing that dress like it was made for her. The spell broke as a group of laughing co-workers exited a nearby bar. Clyde ducked his head and hurried on, cheeks burning. But the image lingered, fueling an ache of longing that grew with each step toward home. By the time he reached his apartment, anticipation thrummed through his veins. The door had barely closed behind him before he was kicking off his sensible work shoes, fingers fumbling with his tie. Soon, he promised himself, the word barely a whisper in the quiet space. Clyde moved through his evening routine on autopilot. A quick shower to wash away the workday. Comfortable, gender-neutral loungewear. A meal cobbled together from fridge leftovers. But all the while, his mind raced ahead to later. To Matilda. As the sky outside deepened to indigo, Clyde found himself before the full-length mirror in his bedroom. He took a steadying breath, then reached for the drawer that held the physical trappings of his true self. The transformation was unhurried, almost ritualistic. Foundation smoothed away the hint of stubble. Subtle contouring softened the angles of his face. A swipe of mascara made his eyes look wider, more doe-like. Lips painted a soft rose, curved into a smile of recognition. "There you are," Matilda murmured, studying her reflection. She slipped on a silk robe, relishing the whisper of fabric against her skin. For a moment, she considered the emerald dress from the store window. How perfect it would be for a night out. Dancing, perhaps? Cocktails with friends who truly saw her. But no, not tonight. The outside world, with its judging eyes and potential dangers, felt too daunting. Here, in the sanctuary of her apartment, Matilda could simply be. She settled onto the bed, arranging herself artfully against the pillows. Her phone was already in hand, open to a carefully curated social media profile. Here, she was Matilda always. Here, she could share glimpses of her true self without fear. The camera clicked as she captured her image. The soft lighting was kind, highlighting her best features. She studied the photo critically before adding a playful caption and posting it to her feed. Within moments, notifications began to ping. Likes, comments, messages of admiration. Matilda basked in the glow of validation, feeling truly seen. One name stood out among the notifications. Dapper Jent, 42. He'd been a steady presence in her online world for weeks now, always quick with a compliment or a flirtatious comment. Matilda's pulse quickened as she opened his message. "Stunning as always, darling. That shade of lipstick was made for you." Matilda's fingers flew across the screen in reply. "You're too kind, though I must admit I'm feeling a bit restless tonight, wishing I had somewhere to show off." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. It was a small thing, this hint of vulnerability, but it felt significant. Dapper Jent's response came swiftly. "What a crime to keep such beauty hidden away. If I were there, I'd whisk you out for a night on the town." Dancing under the stars, perhaps? Matilda's heart raced at the thought. How wonderful it would be to step out into the world as her true self, to feel the night air on her skin, to move to the music without restraint, to be seen, truly seen, by someone who appreciated her for who she was. But reality intruded, as it so often did. She was Matilda only here in the safety of her home. The thought of venturing out, of risking discovery, or worse, it was too much. "A lovely thought," she replied, trying to keep her tone light. "Though I fear the stars would pale in comparison to the club lights. Besides, where would one even go for such an excursion in this town?" She hit send, then set the phone aside. Standing, she moved to her closet, fingers trailing over the small collection of feminine clothing she'd accumulated. Perhaps a little fashion show would lift her spirits. Matilda was midway through trying on her favorite floral sundress when her phone chimed again. She hesitated, torn between the allure of Dapper Jent's attention and the comfort of her private dress obsession. Curiosity won out. "Ah, but that's where I come in, my dear," the message read. "I happen to know of a delightful little spot, very discreet, very welcoming to those who don't quite fit society's narrow definitions. A safe haven for beautiful souls like yourself to spread their wings." Matilda's breath caught. Could such a place really exist? She'd heard whispers of LGBT-friendly venues, of course, but always assumed they were more myth than reality in her conservative town. "It sounds wonderful," she typed, fingers trembling slightly. "But I'm not sure I'm ready for something like that. The idea of going out, of people seeing me—" She trailed off, unsure how to articulate the swirl of longing and fear that filled her chest. Dapper Jent's reply was swift and reassuring. "I understand completely, darling. These first steps can be terrifying, but consider this. What if you had a trusted friend by your side? Someone to be your protector, your guide in this new world?" Matilda's heart raced. Was he offering what she thought he was? The idea was thrilling and terrifying in equal measure. "Are you suggesting—" she typed, leaving the question unfinished. "Only if you're comfortable, of course," came the response. "But yes, I'd be honored to escort you on your first night out. We could meet somewhere neutral first, so you can be sure I'm not some creep. Then, if you feel safe, we could venture to this little oasis I mentioned. No pressure, just two friends enjoying an evening together. What do you say?" Matilda stared at the screen, mind whirling. It was everything she'd dreamed of, a chance to step into the world as her true self with someone who understood by her side. But the risks. She glanced at her reflection in the mirror. The woman who looked back at her was beautiful, yes, but also scared, uncertain. Was she really ready to leave the safety of these four walls? I need to think about it," she finally replied. "It's a big step." "Of course, take all the time you need," Dapper Jent answered. "The offer stands whenever you feel ready, and if that's never, that's okay too. Your comfort and safety are what matter most." Matilda set the phone down, mind racing. She moved to the window, gazing out at the twinkling city lights. Somewhere out there was a world where she could be herself, fully and completely. A world of possibility, of acceptance. But was she brave enough to reach for it? She turned back to her reflection, studying the woman in the mirror. Matilda saw fear there, yes, but also a glimmer of something else. Hope, perhaps, or determination. "Baby steps," she told her reflection firmly. "We'll get there." With renewed purpose, Matilda returned to her closet. She pulled out outfit after outfit, creating imaginary scenarios for each one. A day at the park in a breezy sundress, brunch with friends in a chic pantsuit, dancing the night away in that emerald dream from the boutique window. As she played dress-up, Matilda allowed herself to really envision these scenarios, not as far-off fantasies, but as real possibilities. She practiced walking in heels, perfecting her gait. She experimented with different makeup looks, learning what made her feel most confident. Hours slipped by unnoticed as Matilda lost herself in this world of self-discovery. When she finally glanced at the clock, she was surprised to see it was well past midnight. Reluctantly, she began to put away her things. But as she carefully hung each garment, Matilda made a silent promise to herself. This wouldn't be the last time she indulged like this. In fact, she decided she would set aside time each weekend to fully embrace this side of herself, to become more comfortable in her own skin. As she removed her makeup and prepared for bed, Matilda's thoughts drifted back to Dapper Jent's offer. It still felt overwhelming, but perhaps a bit less so after tonight's explorations. She picked up her phone, rereading their conversation. "Thank you for understanding," she typed. "I'm not ready yet, but I think I'd like to work towards it. Maybe we could talk more about this place you mentioned? Help me feel more prepared for when I do feel ready to take that step?" She hit send before she could second-guess herself, then set the phone aside. Whatever his response, it could wait until morning. Tonight had been a small victory in itself. As Matilda drifted off to sleep, her dreams were filled with swirling dresses and twinkling lights. For once, the figure wearing those beautiful clothes wasn't a stranger or an idealized version of herself. It was simply her, Matilda. Confident, radiant, and free. The first rays of sunlight were just beginning to peek through the curtains when Matilda stirred. For a moment, disorientation clouded her mind. The silky nightgown against her skin felt unfamiliar, a stark contrast to the plain t-shirt and boxers that usually served as Clyde's sleepwear. But then memory rushed back, bringing with it a flood of emotions. Excitement, nervousness, and underneath it all, a quiet sense of rightness. Matilda stretched languidly, savoring the feeling of soft fabric sliding against her skin. She'd impulsively decided to sleep in one of her favorite nightgowns, wanting to hold on to the previous night's sense of freedom for as long as possible. Now, in the gentle light of dawn, that decision felt like a small act of rebellion, a declaration that Matilda wasn't content to exist only in stolen moments anymore. She reached for her phone, curious to see if Dapper Jent had responded to her late-night message. As the screen lit up, a small gasp escaped her lips. Not only had he replied, but the timestamp showed he'd done so almost immediately after she'd sent her message. "I'm so proud of you for even considering this step," his message read. "Of course, I'd be happy to tell you more about the club. It's called Chrysalis. Fitting, don't you think? It's a place for people to spread their wings and become their true selves." Matilda's heart raced as she read on. Dapper Jent described a haven of acceptance and self-expression, a place where people of all gender identities and expressions were welcome, where newcomers were treated with kindness and understanding, never pressured or rushed. "They even offer a first flight program," he explained. "It's for people who are just starting to explore their identity in public. You can request a guide, someone experienced in the community who will stay with you, show you the ropes, and make sure you feel safe and comfortable." It sounded almost too good to be true. Matilda found herself longing to see this magical place with her own eyes, to be surrounded by people who understood, who wouldn't judge. But doubt still niggled at the back of her mind. What if she wasn't passable enough? What if someone recognized her? What if... Matilda took a deep breath, forcing herself to set those fears aside for the moment. One step at a time, she reminded herself. "It sounds wonderful," she typed back. "I'm not ready to visit just yet, but knowing a place like that exists, it gives me hope. Thank you for sharing this with me." She hesitated, then added, "Maybe we could talk more. Not just about the club, but everything. This journey. I don't have anyone in my real life I can discuss this with, and it would be nice to have a friend who understands." Hitting send felt like another small victory. Matilda set the phone aside and rose from the bed, moving to stand before her full-length mirror. The woman who looked back at her seemed different somehow. Stronger, more resolved. "Good morning, beautiful," Matilda whispered to her reflection. The words felt right in a way they never had before. She decided to keep the nightgown on as she went about her morning routine. It was a Saturday, after all. No need to rush back into Clyde's skin just yet. As she brewed her coffee, Matilda's mind wandered, considering the possibilities that lay before her. The idea of visiting Chrysalis still felt daunting, but no longer impossible. Maybe, with time and preparation, she could work up the courage to take that step. But for now, there were smaller goals to focus on. Matilda resolved to spend more time as herself, even if it was just within the confines of her apartment. She'd practice her makeup skills, work on developing a more feminine voice. Maybe she'd even look into ordering that emerald dress she'd admired in the boutique window. Her phone chimed, drawing her from her reverie. Dapper Jent had responded. "I'd be honored to be that friend for you," he wrote. "This journey can be challenging, but it's also beautiful. You're discovering your true self, and that's something to be celebrated. I'm here whenever you need to talk, vent, or just have someone to listen." Matilda felt a warmth bloom in her chest that had nothing to do with the coffee she sipped. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel quite so alone. The rest of the morning passed in a pleasant haze. Matilda allowed herself the luxury of a long, pampering bubble bath. She experimented with different hairstyles, surprised at how much she could do even with Clyde's shorter cut. She even gave herself a manicure, painting her nails a soft, pearlescent pink. As lunchtime approached, Matilda faced a decision. She needed to run errands. Groceries wouldn't buy themselves after all. Normally, this would mean tucking Matilda away and becoming Clyde again. But today felt different. Matilda stood before her closet, considering her options. She wasn't ready to go full femme in public, not yet. But maybe there was a middle ground. Something that would let her hold on to this feeling of authenticity without drawing too much attention. In the end, she settled on a pair of women's jeans that could easily pass for men's, paired with a loose-fitting sweater in a soft lavender. She left her face free of makeup, but couldn't resist keeping the pale pink nail polish. Looking in the mirror, Matilda saw someone who could be read as an effeminate man or a masculine-presenting woman. It wasn't fully Matilda, but it wasn't quite Clyde either. It was a step, a tiny rebellion against the rigid gender norms that had constrained her for so long. "Baby steps," she reminded her reflection. "We're getting there." With a deep breath to steel her nerves, Matilda grabbed her keys and headed out into the world. It wasn't quite the grand debut she'd dreamed of, but as she felt the autumn sun on her face and the weight of her true self settled comfortably on her shoulders, Matilda knew this was only the beginning. The sidewalk stretched before her, a gauntlet of potential judgment. But as she began to walk, Matilda realized something surprising. People barely glanced her way. Those who did offered nothing more than polite nods or distracted smiles. At the grocery store, Matilda's hands trembled slightly as she reached for a shopping cart. She half expected alarms to sound, for someone to point and declare her a fraud. Instead, the elderly woman next to her simply asked for help reaching a high shelf. "Of course," Matilda replied, wincing internally at how deep her voice sounded. But the woman just smiled gratefully, apparently unbothered. As she moved through the aisles, Matilda's confidence grew. She found herself standing taller, her steps more assured. The weight of constant performance, of being Clyde, began to lift. This in-between state felt freeing. At the checkout, the cashier complimented her nail polish. "That's such a pretty shade," she remarked. "I can never get mine to look that neat." Matilda felt a blush creep up her neck. "Thank you," she managed, her voice a little higher this time. It took some practice. The cashier's smile was warm and genuine. "Well, it paid off. Have a great day." Walking home, bags of groceries in hand, Matilda felt like she was floating. She'd done it. She'd been out in the world, not fully as herself, perhaps, but closer than ever before. And the sky hadn't fallen. Back in her apartment, Matilda set down her groceries and reached for her phone. She needed to share this triumph with someone who would understand its significance. "I did it," she typed to Dapper Jent. "I went out. Not full femme, but a step in that direction. And you know what? It felt amazing." His response came quickly. "I'm so proud of you. That's a huge step. How do you feel?" Matilda considered the question. How did she feel? Elated, certainly. Proud of her own bravery. But there was something else, too. A feeling she couldn't quite name. "I feel like myself," she finally replied. "More than I ever have before. It's like I've been holding my breath for years, and I'm finally learning how to breathe again." As the afternoon wore on, Matilda found herself reluctant to change back into Clyde's clothes. She puttered around the apartment, putting away groceries and tidying up, all while reveling in the simple joy of being herself. When evening fell, she made a decision. She wouldn't retreat back into Clyde's skin tonight. Instead, she'd order in, maybe watch a movie, and just exist as Matilda for a little longer. As she scrolled through food delivery options, a notification from her Matilda-only social media account popped up. Someone had commented on her most recent photo. Curious, she tapped to open it. The comment was from a new follower, someone she didn't recognize. "You look so happy and confident in this picture," it read. "I hope one day I can feel that way too." Matilda's heart swelled. She remembered all too well how it felt to be on the other side, longing for the courage to be herself. Without hesitation, she typed out a reply. "You will," she wrote. "It's a journey, and it's not always easy. But every small step is a victory. You've got this." As she hit send, Matilda realized something. In encouraging this stranger, she was also encouraging herself. Each small victory, each step forward, was bringing her closer to fully embracing who she truly was. She glanced at her reflection in the darkened window. The person looking back at her wasn't quite Clyde anymore, but not yet fully Matilda either. She was a work in progress, evolving with each passing day. And for the first time in a long while, Matilda felt genuinely excited about what the future might hold. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Dapper Jent. "So, now that you've had this taste of freedom," his message read, "what's next on your journey?" Matilda considered the question. The idea of visiting Chrysalis still felt daunting, but no longer impossible. Maybe it was time to start seriously considering it. "I think," she typed slowly, "I might be ready to learn more about Chrysalis. Not to visit just yet, but to start preparing myself for that possibility." She hit send, then added another message. "Thank you, by the way, for being here, for understanding. It means more than I can say." As she waited for his response, Matilda's gaze drifted back to the window. The city lights twinkled in the distance, full of possibility. Somewhere out there was a world where she could be fully, unapologetically herself. It wasn't an easy road ahead. There would be challenges, setbacks, moments of doubt. But for the first time, Matilda truly believed she had the strength to face them. She was Matilda. She was becoming more herself with each passing day, and she was finally truly learning how to fly. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.